Shabbat Toledot, Rivka, the blessed presence. Without Rebeca, the inheritance of Abraham would never have reached Jacob and thus the 12 patriarchs. Isaac has put himself in a sort of quarantine for a while, so his wife had to take over the family business. She did not act as a Jezebel because she did not do it of her will, but because she felt that she was forced to do it. Indeed, the man on the side of which she was living and whom she had to support in his moments of weakness lost his sight and was momentarily suspended from the function he had received from the Almighty. Isaac became almost blind. It is very rare that such a thing happens to a righteous man. The loss of sight is in most cases the consequence of sin and usually the one of idolatry. Indeed, Isaac did not love the same son that Yahuwah did. He admired Esau for his virility and his force. Esau, on the other hand, was hated by Yahuwah, as we read in the Haftarah of the week in Malachi chapter 1 verse 2. He looked at his biggest son with the eyes of the world, and that is what caused his blindness. Here is the point where we can the best see what the blessing of Rebeca really represents. She goes so far as to commit a sin considered very serious at the time. She betrayed her husband. This husband, who for a time was not in the place that had been assigned to him. However, she did not quite betray her husband himself. She rather deceived the thing inside of Isaac that caused his blindness. In fact, it was precisely by committing this offense that she showed, although in a human way, but the greatest loyalty to her husband. Rebeca did not lose her sight. In spirit, she was quite lucid, and by the grace of Yahuwah, she was granted to carry out the project of the Almighty that had been momentarily rejected by Isaac. She acted in all good faith, and as a woman who had momentarily lost her marital protection, had made a human decision in order to save the situation. It was indeed Rebekah and Jacob who had been first and primarily deceived by the foreign spirit that provoked Isaac's deviance. I emphasize that Rivka acted well here only from a human point of view. This deception was not in Elohim's will, as we are going to see it later. Jacob the cheater. As in the case of Rebeca, Jacob has never been a crook. His name, unlike all misconceptions and other bad translations, does not mean cheater, usurper or crook, but heel grabber. Some sources tell us that it means Yahuwah favors or even cunning. The following statement, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob? This is the second time he has taken advantage of me," as we can read in Genesis, was made by the same usurper spirit inhabiting Esau as the one who once pushed Eve into sin. It is not because something is written in the Bible that it is right and holy. Let us not forget that the words of the enemy are also quoted the same way as the word of the Most High. Jacob was born grasping his brother's heel. By this act, he certainly wanted to point something out. They will have to talk about certain things later. Indeed, the two children collided in their mother's womb. Why could they be bickering about at such an early age? Who was fighting the other and why? Yahuwah defined a well-established order, an order from which he may deviate in some cases and according to his will. But the birthright is one of the pillars of the Jewish spirit. But in some cases, however, it happens that Yahuwah wants to show his power by bequeathing the right of the firstborn to a younger member of the family, to the weak ones, to those who are not even taken into account by their parents. Such was the case of King David, for example, and many others. We cannot know if this was the case here. However, it is very likely that it was against this original law of birthright that Esau rebelled already in the womb of his mother. He seems to have taken advantage of his strength to overtake the exit of his brother. It was at this point that Jacob made it clear to the outside world that the treachery has occurred against him, as by saying that, "We will talk about it later, my brother." And it was this discussion which has fulfilled when Esau sold back his birthright for a dish of lentils. Esau tried to steal this right by using physical force when they were babies, and now we see that it is just by taking advantage of this same carnal instinct governing his brother that Jacob is taking back what was his originally. However, this is not that simple. How could one believe the word of a man like Esau? He naturally had no intention of keeping his promise, as we will see later. And for this reason, Rebeca had to come to reinforcement. Esau may plot as he wish, but only his father is allowed to pass on the birthright and the blessing that goes with it. So we see that the Almighty allowed Esau to be the first to be born. Indeed, he warns Rebeca when she had saddened by the behavior of her unborn sons, when he says in Genesis 25, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the other will serve the younger." Perhaps Isaac's inclination to the flesh was already present in him, and that was the reason why Yahuwah allowed the other son to be born first in order to put the family to the test. A similar situation had already occurred in the case of Isaac precisely, when consequence of the good ideas and the lack of faith and patience of his parents, an older brother was born to him as well, who is still the source of huge troubles until this day. Ishmael was for Isaac what Esau is now for Jacob. Even the Jews are against Jacob. Even Jewish teachings often describe Jacob as a cheater. The spirit of the history's first anti-Semite, Esau, has even been deceiving and contaminating Jacob's descendants themselves. And that's a huge mistake, because we can describe Jacob as stubborn or reckless, but saying that he was a liar or a swindler is pure distortion of reality and a false accusation. It is therefore time to rehabilitate not only the person of Rebeca, but especially Jacob himself. So many would perhaps realize what Jews really are. The Jewish people is not a tribe of parasites cunning like foxes in order to exploit the peoples, but a nation that have received a legacy from Yahuwah that many other nations would like to steal from them. And as if that was not enough, they are accused of committing the crimes of which they are many times themselves the victims. I do not wish to open a separate chapter in order to demonstrate how this unhealthy process is perpetuated today, when, for example, the Israeli army, the most humanist that has ever existed, is constantly falsely accused of committing serious crimes against innocent victims. Instead of going to ask the Palestinians, why do they allow Hamas to constantly hide their weapons and arsenals under hospitals and schools, and then point the finger to the evil Israelis who kill innocent people? And why are we never showing the masses of messages printed in Arabic and thrown over Gaza asking civilians to leave, because missiles will be fired against these buildings? But you will learn more about this by viewing my video called Jewish State and Zionism. Because the spirit of Esau, wanting to appropriate the birthright, acts more than ever today against the descendants of Jacob. Replacement theology, unwillingness to cede this teeny portion of land under the current name of Israel to the Jewish people, are all blatant examples of this. And of course, Jewish people is not synonym of angel. because many Esau's are constantly being born among us to this day, who are our twins, the same Jews in their blood and underpants as we are. Yet they serve other principalities like power, money, and mammon in general, so that all the accusations that apply to them weight on the whole people. But more about this topic in my article and video, Anti-Semitism and Anti-Christianity. But coming back to Jacob, we can see that the most beautiful proof that Yahuwah's will to transmit the birthright to Jacob is in the text of the blessing that he is given through his father Isaac, as we read in Genesis 27:27-28. The smell of my son is like the smell of a field that Yahuwah has blessed. May Elohim give your heavens dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. So here we can see that when Isaac's mouth opens to speak these words, he is not conscious about what he's saying. He serves only as an intermediary, as a spokesperson. It is indeed the Spirit of Yahuwah that expresses itself. How could Isaac have said these words to a son who has never had anything to do with agriculture, field harvest, or flocks? Esau was a hunter, and if Isaac had blessed him according to his human vision, he would rather have spoken of hunting, game, and precision in archery. Esau had nothing to do with the morning dew, the fat of the earth, the wheat of the harvest, and wine. And concerning Jews cursing Jacob, I would like to share my own testimony about this. On a French-speaking Israeli internet channel, in 2007, if I remember well, I heard an old Sephardic rabbi, dressed in Middle Eastern European-style Orthodox clothes, teaching about how big cheater and liar Jacob was. I contacted him the same day by email, asking him how even religious Jews could think that these accusations of Esau are justified. Of course, I never got an answer from him, but I did get an answer from the Almighty himself, because from the next week on, this so-called rabbi did never post any more Saturday teachings again, and the TV channel itself, together with its website, also ended up disappearing without a trace after a few weeks. I haven't seen this company since then either. And the funny thing about this is that I didn't even pray for this to happen. I just asked a person a question, and then it all came crashing down like a castle of cards. Here we can see how much more difficult it is to be Jewish, because for the Greeks or the nations, the time of grace is still valid, and they can still happily curse Jacob without seeing any kind of immediate judgment on them in every case. But for us, the Jews, stupidity is not tolerated for a minute by the Almighty. It is indeed that hard to be the elder and the firstborn of the family. The well-intentioned person who helps the Eternal. Jacob cheated only once, when he tricked Isaac under Rebekah's pressure. The character of Jacob is nevertheless not as pure and perfect as I described it above. Indeed, he too has shown many times the same human weaknesses that have manifested in his father's and grandfather's life. His tendency of truth makes him a fighter like many of his ancestors. The young Jacob often looks more like an avenger than someone in perfect submission to the Almighty. He will go so far as to serve a man for 14 years in order to get a woman like a true medieval knight. He is often acting on a whim, knowing that Yahuwah of hosts is with him and that nothing can happen to him. At least it is what he thinks. Because we read in Hosea, chapter 12, verses 2 and 3, Yahuwah has a charge to bring against Judah. He will punish Jacob according to his ways and repay him according to his deeds. In the womb he grasped his brother's heel. As a man he struggled with Elohim. It seems that Jacob did not have to report anything when he was born. Yahuwah would certainly have asserted his will in due time. It would not have been necessary for him to intervene as a human and grasp Esau's heel in order to make people see that something went wrong from the moment they were inside their mother. He should have let things go their way so that the situation would have been restored according to the original will of Yahuwah. In this act, we can see the same basic mistake many biblical characters are falling into. By knowing the will of Yahuwah concerning their own lives, many of them just thought to have the right to intervene and accelerate the fulfillment of their promises. But the most amazing example of this deeply human character, which tries to solve everything with its own strength, is when Rebekah and Jacob took the defense of Yahuwah's plan in such a level that they lied and deceived Isaac, the forefather. No matter how bad spiritual state Isaac was then, since he did not love the son who Elohim loved, but the other one whom Elohim hated. The consequence of this mental blindness was that he became physically blind as well, and his wife and son took advantage of this precise weakness. No matter how commendable the act is, because it served a good cause, it still proves to be a good solution only from a human point of view. Because in this situation, Rebekah and Jacob, shouldn't they have fallen on their knees, torn their cloth, dressed in sackcloth, sprinkled ashes on their heads, fasted, anything that people are doing in times of trouble, and especially beg Yahuwah to intervene in some way? Didn't Esau go hunting? Didn't the same Esau say long before, when he sold his birthright to his brother, "Look, I'm about to die," Esau said, "What good is the birthright to me?" as we can read in Genesis 25. At this moment, did he not prophesy about his own destiny? Did he not curse himself in favor of Jacob? If they did not act according to their human wisdom, Esau might have been killed by the beast this time and not the other way around. In this way, they would have spared themselves from constantly having to flee and fear Esau, since this one survived because of their good human idea of resolving problems. Not to mention Esau's descendants, who are still present and causing many troubles to Jacob's descent till this day. It is therefore more important than ever to ask for the gift of discernment, not only for seeing the alien spirits in other people, but also in order to see what's the next step we should or shouldn't do in our path of disciples, so that we should never curse ourselves again, like Rebekah and Jacob did at that point.